like to think that flying is a metaphor for freedom. Every day when we get up, we can fly anywhere we want to in our minds or in our expression. And I hope that my art expresses that each person can find some sort of freedom in it.
When viewing the art of Carole Sabiston, flying, horizons, and silent travel are reappearing themes which to Carole represent human potential and freedom. Although beginning her art career as a painter, Carole's success came while using innovative techniques of fabric assemblage. This success has earned her the prestigious Sadie Bronfman Award for Excellence, as well as membership in the Royal Canadian Academy. Many of her monumental wall hangings and three-dimensional pieces can be found permanently installed in buildings as far afield as Spain and Panama. The creation of art this size demonstrates imagination and careful pre-planning. In fact, Carole's first full view of the completed project may occur when it is first installed.
Well, today we're going to get into the summer section, so we want to get into more warm colors. I think we'll take some of this for sure, this wild leopard skin.
Oh, I think that'll be terrific.
High-tech animal, isn't that marvelous?
That's great.
Okay, and perhaps this one, really rich.
That's very brilliant.
It'll really set up the color reflections as you move by the piece.
Okay,
and
else?
I think some of this.
Oh, that's quite amazing.
Yeah, well, we're going to be going into this panel here, 7. I think, so do you want to iron up those?
At her studio in Victoria, British Columbia,
Yeah.
Carole works with her assistant, Elizabeth Anderson, to choose and prepare the materials, which in a sense have replaced her paints. Fabrics are cut into strips, ready to lay down across the canvas, like brushstrokes.
Right, pull the net around. Let's keep it taut.
Okay, which corner do you want to do
Well,
first?
I'll lower into this lower left corner here. Okay, I'm going
These are
down,
combined with netting
down.
to create the effects of light, translucency, and movement.
I've been watching Carole's work. Watching is too pretentious a way of saying it, but I have been seeing Carole's work for about 20 years, I suppose. And when I first saw the small fabric paintings that she was doing, they reminded me rather of the samplers that young Victorian women had done, a modern update of the Victorian sampler. And Carole seems to draw on all the traditional world of women, and then go on from there. She works with the stuff of a woman's life, the fabrics, the needle and thread. She's now, I see, gone into the kitchen and using jam jars. But there's nothing literal about her use of these things, and she expands it in a way that I couldn't have imagined when I first saw her work. Something totally new has taken over to me. She, with this change in scale, from going from small to almost immeasurable, taking us off into outer space practically, something clearly has happened inside her head that's different. I can't believe her head can be the same as it was when I first saw her work. I once tried to write a poem which had quite a good line in it, actually. It's not the same, only bigger, being a giant. And I think Carole knows this, that it isn't the same, only bigger. Something changes radically.
Well, I don't really know where these the ideas or the thoughts come from, although looking back over it in the last few years, I think my main concerns with the horizon and flying probably go right back to a childhood when I was 9 and my family immigrated from England. We left in January, and I'd come from a very small town and everything seemed to be small around it, and having gone back there, I know it was very small. And then traveling across the Atlantic Ocean for a week on a huge ocean liner, seeing nothing but horizon, and getting off at Halifax, then boarding a train and traveling all the way across the country for another 7 days, dead of winter, so the horizon was completely white all the way along. So I had 2 weeks of nothing but horizon. And somehow I think that's been really engraved on my thoughts and my outlook, because I'm always looking towards the horizon somehow. Looking out towards the ocean or the Pacific, the color is always changing. And depending on where the sun is, one part of the horizon may be brilliant white reflective light, and the other side of that, 90 degrees away, might be very dark, depending on where the atmosphere is and the light changes. So that horizon is always the same, but it's always changing. And I think that's a crux of what I'm trying to capture. It's elusive. And perhaps it's why I'm using a lot of reflective materials, so that as a viewer looks at my work, as they walk by it, it changes. Living where we do, on this island, right at the tip of this island, where we have a convergence of sea, sky, and land, living on the edge is a metaphor, perhaps, is kind of daring, although of course it's a fairly comfortable life living here. But it's that sea, that enormous energy of that sea and sky coming together at this fine pinnacle. I probably get a lot from that energy of the interreaction, that I like to watch the sea moving against the earth. Well, being on the land looking at the horizon is one thing, but to me the ultimate is to get above the land and look at a wider horizon. The more I can see, the more exciting it is, the more possibilities are there. Watching the islands that we're surrounded by, particularly flying over the islands, where the islands seem to have their own life and they seem to move all by themselves, you know. When I get up in that airplane and I'm looking down, it's as if I'm stationary and all the islands are moving down around me. And as the sun hits the water, the light changes and is in movement all the time. I look out at the window constantly, expecting to see other things flying, and to see another plane in the distance. I think that's quite exciting, because I know that at any given moment on this earth there are hundreds, perhaps thousands of planes flying around the earth, hugging the earth fairly closely. And as we know now, there are many, many more things that are either flying or orbiting the earth. And because our atmosphere blocks it out, we can't see very far, but I like to imagine they're up there. I think of all the Sputniks and the satellites that are orbiting the earth right now. I think it's about 7,000 pieces of hardware up there. Some of it is debris. All this stuff now is orbiting the earth.
Along with satellites and debris, the outer space depicted in Carole's work is full of spheres, parts of planets, light shafts, and most notably, flying carpets.
Going back 1,000 years, when those flying carpets came out of Persia, where did they go? You know, they were flying around somewhere, so I presume they're all up there, orbiting with all this space debris. And somehow I feel there's that magic, that they're all intermeshed together, they're watching each other. And any day now, I think the astronauts are going to come back and report or take a photograph of one of these flying carpets going by. But in a sense, that's all metaphoric for our flights of fantasy.
During the taping of this program, Carole's thoughts were on her current project, the creation of a squadron of flying carpets, which she was preparing for an upcoming traveling exhibit.
Flying's been an integral part of my work over the last few years. And somewhere about 2 or 3 years ago, in one of my late night ideas, I remember doing this little tiny sketch using a formation that would be taking off from the ground. So the concept was established then, and it was the formation of anywhere from 10 to 18 pieces, which constitutes a squadron, according to the dictionary. So I brought it down to 15, which seemed a workable number, and still give that illusion of being a formation. And so that it was just barely lifting off the ground and in the motion of moving up. Squadron has been the working title, and it's gone through many levels of subtitles, because I usually have one title, colon, and then a sub-sentence to it. And I think now it's formulated at squadron, colon, we try to fly every day, or something along that idea. So the idea is that society or an individual or whatever has to get up every day and renew itself and keep on going. Even though there are, so many troubles, major or minor, that beset us individually or as a country or a society or whatever. So I regularly clip things from the newspapers, and we get 3 newspapers a day. It's a lot of reading. So I've become quite a good skimmer. But every day I usually clip 1 or 2 pictures or articles, and I don't really know why I'm doing it at the time, other than something about it captivates me. And I'll have them up in the wall in my studio. So I clipped a piece last summer, it was on June the 24th, that Bruce Hutchison had written in an editorial in the Vancouver Sun. And its title was, Mr. Snifkin Sees Rot in Perspective. Now, what captivated me there, I don't know, maybe it was the word perspective or rot. I think Mr. Snifkin's a hysterical pseudonym that he's used. So reading through this article, editorial really, what it really said was Mr. Snifkin goes out to his country cottage. He needs to repair the porch because it's rotting. And as he contemplates this idea, he walks through the forest and is awed by its beauty. And we shouldn't be, as humans, be chopping this down and using it for our own waste. Why not just let the porch rot? And as he's contemplating all these things, he's thinking about the world. And that time it was Tiananmen Square and the horrors going on there, and starvation in Ethiopia. So all these horrors of the world were besetting